The answer to this question about fiber boils down to this. Our bodies don't require fiber for any nutritional or physiological reason. Fiber literally serves no purpose. What fiber is, it's the edible part of plants that is indigestible. And these undigested particles are what cause things like diverticulitis and IBS. Fiber is also void of any nutrition and can often inhibit the absorption of minerals and nutrients. Now, more recently, meaning in the past 5 years or so, fiber has been said to help improve our gut microbiome, that the microbiome will feed on some of these fibers and in turn improve our gut health. However, there is very little evidence that this is actually the case. But let's assume for a moment there was some benefit to your microbiome from eating fiber. When you eat those plant foods, you're introducing anti-nutrients. So the little bit of benefit that you might potentially get from the fiber is negated by all the anti-nutrients that you're taking in. And now you're making the nutrients you're consuming from nutrient-dense animal meat less available or less absorbable. Let's keep going. Fiber is the primary cause of bloating and gas. And as far as bowel movements are concerned, fiber serves only to bulk up our stools. Frequent consumption of fiber results in one of two extremes: constipation or increased frequency of evacuation. Now imagine this. It's rush hour on a Friday afternoon and you're traveling home from work. There's already a lot of traffic on the road, but at a certain point you need to travel through a 2-lane tunnel and come out the other side in order to arrive home. Now, if you were to take every normal size car and SUV traveling through that tunnel and magically turn them into semi-trucks, would that help or hurt your situation? Because that's exactly what happens when we eat fiber. It adds bulk and weight to our stools. Now, since we're on the topic of bowels, I think it's important to point out when we're going to a carnivore eating plan, it's not uncommon for some people to experience constipation or harder stools initially. In fact, that was me. But the reason this happens is because of a very common mistake people make: eating too much lean protein and not consuming enough fat. The more you go toward the carnivore end of the spectrum, the more fat you need. My mistake was bringing my low-fat mentality into a high-fat diet, and that doesn't work well. The simple fix was this: I increased my fat consumption. I noticed that on days when I did not consume enough fat, the next day is when I would experience harder stools. Recognizing this pattern, I made sure to eat more fat each day by having fattier cuts of meat or simply adding 1 or 2 tablespoons of butter to the leaner protein meals that I was having. And then the next day, I was back to having perfect bowel movements. For some people, the opposite can occur. They can experience diarrhea. This is most typical for people who were previously eating very low fat and high fiber diets. What's happening is that your stomach produces bile, and the purpose of bile is to emulsify fats. But because you were eating low fat and likely high carb for a very long time, your body is not yet acclimated to producing the necessary amount of bile to handle the fat that you're now consuming. So the initial consequence of this can be diarrhea for some people. I know this was the case for Corey Beth for about 2 to 3 days, but that was because she was a heavy consumer of plant-based carbohydrates prior to switching to carnivore. I say this just to make you aware. For some people, depending upon where you're starting from and your diet history, there can be a transition phase. You should know this so that you don't prematurely throw in the towel just because of a momentary negative experience as you are starting to correct your gut.